Good morning, all. So I've had a couple of questions about my two new games, Advanced Fictional Franchise Football and Boxing Time Bouts. A couple of comments on the videos over the last couple of days, and of course I've had a couple of emails. So I want to address those questions here because if one person is having some questions, then I have to assume there will be others. And so let's try to answer some of those questions. So the games are generally, when I write game rule books, they're generally literal. I'll tell you exactly what you want to do. So for instance, in Advanced Franchise Football, I've had a couple of questions about the charts. So they're generally not only are my rule books literal, I try to be literal in the telling someone how to do it, but I also make them linear, right? I try to keep things in order. So for instance, this, of course, I tell you literally how you create via steps the teams. When you create your teams, you'll use this 7-step process and repeat it until all the teams are made. One of the things I personally have discovered in sharing a tutorial on this on the channel was make sure you do everything in pencil before you finish every team, because some of your teams may score abilities from GMs or coaches that allow you to actually affect your opponents. So it's best to finish every team and then go through and allow the teams that have special abilities to change teams in the league. So you want to write everything down on a grid in pencil and go through everybody's turn creating them, and then go through every team creating them before you start to change the teams. Okay, so just remember very simply for these games, it's in order, it's literal, and it's linear, and you just generally want to do things in order. So it walks you through what you have to do. First, you're going to select your city and your name. You're going to roll up your stadium, right? Then you're going to figure out your owner, because your owner could potentially affect what you can spend money on. And you need to know that because you are allowed to spend money if you have it. Of course, if you're creating your teams from the beginning, you're not going to have any money in the bank. So, but you need to know as you go on to the off season whether an owner will let you spend money on free agents, for instance. Okay. So you'll get your city, you name your city, you name your mascot, or you roll up your stadium quality. Now, again, you have an option of whether something's outdoor or indoor. It's completely up to you. For instance, I made a 1998 league, and I was willing to randomly find out if they were inside or outside. But if I was making a 1940s league, I would put every team outside. So I think it should also matter. You should feel free to make your teams indoor or outdoor, but you definitely want to roll up the quality of the stadium randomly for the team, because that's going to dictate whether that team is making money or not. And so you want to put teams in a situation where they're just not making a lot of money, or that they need to upgrade stadiums, etc. But I think indoor should be your option when you're creating your teams for your league. Again, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you're not going to see a lot of indoor teams, but that's entirely up to you. But I do put both in here so it's a fair random chance. And then this just describes how much money you earn per win for each size stadium. It also describes what outdoor and dome mean. It also gives you how you can, again, literally how you can build a new stadium and how you can upgrade a stadium. However, you're not going to be doing this until teams have been around long enough to accrue in their bank accounts enough money to do things. And then, of course, we're going to roll up our owner, and that's going to tell us whether they're poor and what they are. And you can roll this twice. You can roll for whether it's a wealthy, stingy, or you can take it literally. Again, the goal is it's one roll for owner. So if I rolled a 3, I would be a family competitive owner. Right, but you could make 2 rolls on this table. You could do this up here too. You could roll twice. You could roll for the size and the indoor-outdoor. However, I've got it equally balanced, so it's totally random. But here, for instance, it's not totally random. There's some design choice. I'm trying to represent the kind of owners we would have seen, let's say, in any version of history, that you might see old money and they're traditional. You might see an owner that really is in over his head, so he has to pinch his pennies. You're going to see families that have owned teams a long time, and they're all about winning. And you're going to see families that have been around a long time, and they just don't have a lot of money. You're certainly going to see wealthy owners that want to win championships. You're also going to see wealthy owners that are maybe a little more traditional, right? I couldn't find myself making a wealthy stingy. What's the point of wealthy stingy, right? So this, again, you would make one roll. However, you could make two. You could roll for what kind of owner, and then whether they are traditional, competitive, or stingy. And this gives you an example of what all three of those things do. Then you have to find out your base scores, because we aren't going to be able to change these things before season if we don't have our base scores. So you'll roll to find out what your base is. Obviously, you want high offensive dice. You want a very low defense. So 8 is really bad. Here, 3 is bad. 8 is bad. 6 is the best you can start, and 0 is the best you're going to start. Once you have bases, we know we're going to read this stuff literally. It's just straight language, and it's literal. If it says add a number, then you add a number. If it says remove a number, right? If it says plus a number, then you want to modify, right? So anyway, then you're going to roll up your GM, and your GM is going to tell you. So what happens when you get your GM? This is your GM until you fire them, right? So once I've established my GM and I name them, that's going to be my GM every single off season until I fire them, right? And it costs money to fire a GM. So let's say I roll college AD. Then I'm going to make his roll 1 to 6 chart. If I roll one of the numbers, this is something that he does for me. If I roll a blank number, which would be 2, 3, and 5, he doesn't do anything for me. He's working. He's narratively, abstractly, he's obviously working in the organization, but he just doesn't do anything extra for me, right, as I'm building the team. If I rolled a 2, he would automatically have hired a pass the ball coach. If I roll a 4, he will have automatically hired an aggressive head coach. If I rolled free agent draft reroll, then I'm going to put that on my team chart. I'm going to bank that he has a free draft reroll. I can't use it right now, but I could use it when I get to the off season. So I'm going to write that down. He currently has a free draft reroll. I haven't spent it yet, and that would go on that team's chart. But let's say I rolled aggressive head coach. That means he's hired an aggressive head coach. I don't need to make my head coach roll now. So my aggressive head coach has been hired. I'm going to write that down in my. And again, you're in the off season, in order, you always start the off season by rolling this table. You will then roll your coaches table in the off season. Then you will roll the off season mandatory roll. Then you will do your free agent and your draft rolls. So you will do all of those things every single off season. Okay. So let's say, again, he told me, let's say my college AD hired an aggressive head coach. So I'm done. All I've got to do now is roll my aggressive head coach. Okay. So I don't have to make this roll now because he hired an aggressive coach for me. So we're going to come down here. I'm going to note on my team chart that I have an aggressive head coach. He will stay aggressive until I fire him. He will never change unless I fire him. And again, it says right here what it costs to hire and fire. It says right here what it costs to hire and fire GMs and coaches right here. Okay. So I have an aggressive head coach. So every off season, or I would roll now in creating the team, I would make this roll. If I roll a 1, 2, 3, or 4, if I roll a 5 or 6, he doesn't do anything. If I roll a 1, 2, 3, or 4, I have to follow this literally. Remove a defensive adjustment point from any team in the league. Well, let's say this is my first team. There are no other teams in the league. That's what I mean. Write it in pencil. You're going to want to make a note of this because after I complete my 6, 8, 12, 32 team league, 300 team league, if you're making, say, college, right? If you wanted to make a college or a gigantic world league or something, this coach can then go to any team in the league when they're all created and actually steal a point, remove a point from an enemy. So let's say I'm making, I'm making an AFC, I'm making a Western division, and in the West, there's a team at the end of team creation, there's a team in the West with a -4 defense. Well, that's damn good. Well, my coach basically says, hey, we're going to aggressively go out there and court away their free safety, whatever, and I'm going to remove a point from that team. My team doesn't get the point, but I get to take a point away. So that team would start the season at -3. As opposed to -4. So you're literally going to take a point away from another team in the league. You do not get to spend it on your own team. You just get to lower their impact, right? If it says lose a die, that means your team loses a die, and it tells you why. Because we suffered an injury. He's an aggressive coach. We practice. So we're probably practicing in full pads, maybe practicing twice a day. Somebody gets hurt, and we're going to lose an offensive die before the season starts. If it says lose a defensive point, my team loses his own team loses that point. So just remember, it's very simple. Read everything, because the game is literal and linear. And if you read this right here, if you don't just skip through to the chart thinking the chart's going to be right, it tells you defensive first coach. When you roll this die to find out what your defensive first coach does for your team, this is added to your team's current base. So that's basic math, right? If I rolled up a base defense of +8, but then I lucked out and got a defense first coach, and then I got even luckier, rolled a 6, I would get to subtract 3 from that +8. My team would go into the season with a +5 defense instead of a +8. So that's why it says -1, -2, -3. I'm going to actually add this to my current base defense, right? Okay. So that should help understand how coaches work, right? And by the way, you're going to roll, unless I fire this coach, every single off season I have to roll this chart. Okay. So let's say I have a -5 defense, and I go into the off season, I roll my GM, nothing happens. I roll my defensive first coach, and I roll a -3. Guess what? My -5 went up to a -8 defense. So my defensive first coach is built a championship quality defense. Right? Okay. Again, I for talent, it's a plus, which means you're going to add a die, or you're going to subtract from your defensive points, right? If it says +2 offensive dice, you're going to add 2 dice, right? So, okay. Again, so those are how your coaches work, and you will use this every offseason. You will start in order. You'll roll your GM effect, you'll roll your coach effect, then you'll roll your offensive offseason mandatory roll. Every team must do this. If I roll a 1, this is a replacement. And again, if you read the rules, fine print, this up here replaces whatever. It doesn't add to it, it replaces it. So if I have an 8 offense and I roll this 1 in the off season, that means I'm a 4. I lost 4 dice. I would write that down narratively, that my quarterback retired, or maybe I had 3 offensive starters leave for greener pastures. Devastating offseason. So if I had an 8 offense and in the offseason rolled a 1, that 8 becomes a 4. I lost 4 dice. That would be a devastating offseason for that team. And your defensive adjustment becomes a +4, not added to your defense. It is a +4. And this is meant to replace. So there's only 2 bad things that can happen out of 6 in the offseason, and it's mandatory. Every team makes this roll. But it can be disastrous for some teams. It can actually improve some. I mean, if I had a 3-die offense and I rolled this, I would actually go up. If I had a +10 defense and rolled this in the offseason, I would actually improve by 6 points. So this can be good. This can be good depending on how your teams come into the offseason. Okay. Teams are not required to use any free re-rolls or buy any, right? So you can have them and bank them and keep them. You don't have to use free re-rolls. They're not going to go away. So imagine free re-rolls are like mad money. It's like cash that your GM has set aside. Your owner will allow you to spend money on either free agents or drafts that when you have money. But let's say you don't. You hold them. Let's say you've over the last 3 off seasons, you've had a GM that's collected 3 free agent re-rolls and I've never used them. This off season, right? I have to do every team has to do their draft roll, but I can buy new draft rolls. But but I now have 3 free agent rolls to try to do something here, right? That wouldn't cost me any money because my GM has collected over the last 3 off seasons a free re-roll that I have not used. So you want to write on your team charts how much money you have, how much money you've banked, and you're going to want to also keep track of how many free re-rolls you have collected and not used, because you can use them on certain charts anytime you want. So you could be hiring free agents in the middle of a season, right? So what it does is it makes for the games are instant result scoring, but what happens is you end up managing the teams through fast standings. So as we create standings, we are able to actively participate in trying to change the outcomes of teams, right? So instead of the onus being on of the actual games, the onus is on trying to get teams moving up the standings or out of the dungeon or, staying on top, whatever. Okay. That's it. And just remember, this stuff's literal and it's in order. So the off season, yes, you will roll a GM every off season. You will do what it says. If your GM says, let's say I have an aggressive coach and I roll my college AD and he says, pass the ball, coach. Oh shit. That means he's suggesting we fire and hire, and I could, for free, immediately replace my aggressive head coach with a pass the ball coach without paying a penny, right? Or I can decline and say, no, I'm going to go ahead and leave the successful aggressive coach in place. So that means this ADs was basically suggesting we hire a new coach. I can ignore that, right? And I would go down here, and then my next offseason role is my coach's aggressive chart. So I would do his aggressive chart. Then I would do the mandatory off-season role, and you'll do this every season for every team in your league. And again, do it in pencil, because as you work through all the other teams, there are going to be teams, your 5 teams into your 12-team season, and one of them gets to remove a point from an enemy. You might go back and do the first team that you did in the off-season and remove a point. So you want to do it in pencil until the season's done, or track it on a sheet that you can just change, right? So the mandatory roles that must be done in the off-season are GM, coach, and off-season. Then, of course, the draft. It has to be done at least one draft role for every team in the league. You do not have to purchase or use free ones for any more than that. And then free agents are generally completely optional. You don't have to do any of these, or you can do as many as you can afford to buy or as many as you have free. And if you roll a number, so this is for those people who maybe don't recognize this style of rule writing, table writing. If you roll a number not on the list, that means nothing happens. It doesn't mean that between 6, 7, and 8 are the defensive -1 adjustment. No, that means nothing occurs. You draft somebody who doesn't affect your team. Or you don't sign a free agent, or you sign a free agent, but he doesn't positively affect your team, right? And that's it. So just remember, that's how it works. And you're going to do this in order for every team. Now, what I do in the off season, I start with the worst team as the number. I go with the worst team first, like a number 1 draft pick. So I put them in order of how they finish. I do the worst team first, all the way down to the best team, and then at the end of that, before I do my draft or my free agent roles, I will tweak the teams before I go into the draft or the free agent roles. But it doesn't matter how you do this. It's entirely up to you, as long as you allow every team its fair chance at changing themselves or other teams. But really, the order you do it in, or how you want to impact play, can be as frenetic as real life free agency, right? I roll up one of the team says you can remove a point from an enemy, and I go, okay, I'm going to go ahead right now and take a point away from LA. LA's my arch rival. They've got -5 defense. I'm going to drop them to a -4, and they haven't even done their off-season roles yet. They haven't even done their, right? So I could take and use that point before they've even rolled this chart, and they could end up with a defensive adjustment of +4, and I have a laugh and say, well, I took away a point, and then that imploded their entire defense. I took away their captain, and when that guy left, that defense fell apart. So narratively, I can explain it. So your off season can be as harried and as frenetic and as weird and out of order as you want it to be. Just remember, every single team gets their go, and every single team has to go through it, or you'll see your team that's a juggernaut would never change, and you want them to change, right? Okay, that's it. So I just wanted to go over this particular book. And by the way, yes, before every single game, both teams must suffer the weather effect if they're outdoor. And yes, one team could have a -2 for today's game, and the other team is not affected by the weather. It would be an indication that one team's got a better game plan for the weather, or just lucky enough to be wearing longer cleats and aren't falling and slipping all over the place. And if it's inside, every team must suffer a potential injury before the game. Injuries are only for that game. They're not long-standing, right? And this just creates a dynamism for every roll you make, every game, every week, which is fun, right? And then overtime is very simple. If they end in a tie, you're going to make a simple roll. If you roll a 3, the home team always gets to roll first. That's part of the home field advantage. If you roll a 3 or a 6, they scored. That's it. It's sudden death. It's over. Home team wins by a field goal. Home team wins by a touchdown. If the home team doesn't score, then you're going to roll for the away team. If the away team rolls a 3 or 6, right, it's over. The away team will have won in a sudden death overtime game, right? If neither team scores, then it's going to end in a tie, or you're going to continue overtime with another roll for home and another roll for away until it's decided. So that's the football game. I hope this helps all of you out there who, again, just remember, with most of my simple booklet games, everything is literal. You read it in order. You do it in a particular order. It's going to be literal and linear. So, right, I should put that in the rules. First thing up here, it should say, Advanced Fictional Football, all rules are literal and linear. Okay, let's go look at boxing bouts. So this is my second game, new game that I released this week. And I've had a couple of questions about this. Okay, so what's most important here is you're going to be rolling a pool of dice every round for each boxer. Each boxer gets to roll their 5 dice. You're going to create your boxers. That's self-explanatory, I think. I haven't had any questions about that. But where I've had questions is kind of how to score it, right? And I define all this, but ties, for instance, when boxers score the same result, it's always a tie. So if both boxers roll a cut, then it's going to be a 10-10 round. So let's see, I roll for the first boxer, he cuts the blue corner rolls a cut, it's going to be a 10-10 round. If I roll a cut and the other boxer rolls an 11, we're going to score that round 10-8 for the guy that cuts. So a cut is going to imply that he's beaten his opponent up enough that he's drawn blood, he's swollen eyes, and they're going to win that round 10-8 if they cut, right? If they roll a cut. Now, one of the questions I've had, for instance, is if there's a tie. So anytime anything ties, it's going to be a 10-10 round. If I get a knockdown and then you roll a knockdown, it's a 10-10 round. Both boxers will have pummeled each other enough that there's been a standing 8, or somebody might have taken a knee. Remember, knockdown can never lead to a knockout unless there's been 3, unless it's the 4th knockdown of the fight. So if my boxer has collected 4 knockdowns in a fight, the fight will end in a knockout automatically, right? If I roll a KO, then we have to confirm the knockout. Okay, but let's say I roll a 12 and a 12. That's going to be a tie round, 10-10, right? If I roll a 12 and a 10, that guy will win 10-9. If I roll a foul, automatically that boxer is going to lose 10-9 unless the other boxer rolls a foul, and then it's going to be a 10-10, right? So just remember, if there's ties, it's always a 10-10. If the cut versus points, the cut opponent wins 10-8. If there's a knockdown versus a cut, then it's going to be a 10-8 round for the KD, right? Because we're going to prioritize a knockdown over a cut, right? So if there's a KO, but he doesn't knock out his opponent, then that's going to be scored as a KD. It's a 10-8 round, right? Anyway, so again, if you read these rules, number one, I've always suggest this, but it sounds patronizing. Read the rules. Read them as best you can, thoroughly through. And then, of course, again, mostly I write my rules to be literal, all right? I mean, this is a literal thing. KO requires a reroll, and it would be an actual. If he makes the KO rating, it's an actual KO. If not, he would win 10-8, right? So, highest points will win the round 10-9. So if I score 14 and boxer 2 scores 11, I win the round 10-9. A tie result is a 10-10 round, okay? What else? If you exceed your limits, okay. So this assumes a single judge 10-point must system, meaning there's always going to be somebody winning a round 10-9 or 10-8. So if for some reason you're having trouble remembering, just remember somebody has to win the round 10-8, 10-9. Even if you don't want to use 10-8 for cut opponents, just change it to 10-9. Just make sure that the boxer that scores a cut against his opponent should win the round, unless his opponent gets a KD or a cut, right? Then it's going to be a KD will overrule, which you'll notice in my rules, I give you a greater than distribution. It'll tell you that the KO overrules KD, overrules cut. Somewhere in here, I have a rock, paper, scissors. Maybe I don't. Maybe I did not put it in. I may have taken it out because it looked confusing. Okay, so anyway, that's the only question I've really had in the boxing game, right? So just remember, most of the rules are here. You're just going to probably have to read, and you might have to read through something twice. It's just not necessarily going to be numbered. For instance, it's not going to say rule number 4-2 KDs, and we're not going to reference it that way. So, you're going to want to read carefully KDs. And in this description, the KDs will answer most of your questions, I think. So I had a great email question today about a cut or an injury. What if somebody's injured but doesn't suffer an injury? Well, they're going to lose the round. They just aren't injured. So whatever the other boxer scored will win them the round. So when all else fails, and you can't determine from a roll, then the other boxers probably won the round, right? So if I roll an injury, but he fails to be injured, and the other boxer rolled a 14, that boxer wins the round 10-9, right? The other boxer just didn't get injured, right? So that's pretty simple, I think, and that helps. Again, I try to design my games where you can't break them. I mean, even if you didn't do this quite right, and you rolled an injury, and then you said, hey, you roll to confirm it, and it's not confirmed, and then you re-roll his action for the round and score a 13, so be it. That's okay. You check to see if he's injured. If he's not injured, you roll again, see what happens. So you can't break the game, right? You just can't. They are designed where if you follow them literally, you're going to get through them, you're going to have a good time, you're going to get results literally, but they're built in such a way that they're abstracted enough that you can make tweaks to them, you could do it slightly wrong, or you could do them in different orders, whatever, right? So they are really games you can operate. So anyway, hopefully this helps with some of those. I mean, I just released these. I anticipated some questions. I did a tutorial on the channel for both games, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the injury question came up in the tutorial. So it's a great question, and I appreciate it. So hopefully this helps those who have purchased these two games. All right, bye-bye.